Teaching music is one of the most rewarding and most meaningful jobs in the world. But let's be honest, it's really, really stressful being a music director. My hope in this video is to provide you with some strategies that I've used, that I've found helpful throughout my career, and that I hope maybe might be of some use to you as well. Please subscribe below and feel free to check out my website at joelpowellconductor.com. I present professional development and conduct all around the country, and I like to try to offer as many helpful resources to music educators as possible. To be clear, in no way am I purporting to be a psychiatrist, but I strongly recommend that you talk to one if you're going through a difficult time. I certainly have done that, and I found it to be so helpful to talk to a trained professional. So don't ever be afraid to do that. I've been very blessed to enjoy a career teaching high school orchestra and middle school orchestra very successfully for the past 15 years and counting, and I absolutely love what I do. My hope with this video is to share practical experiences and stressors that I've experienced and how I've dealt with them throughout the course of my career and how I've evolved in this process. And I hope you find it helpful as well. Honestly, I think that this is a conversation we don't have enough as music directors. We work in this insane pressure cooker where we're trying to achieve the impossible, and we're trying to help kids be their absolute best. But sometimes we don't give enough time to ourselves to be our personal happiest and personal best. The reality is that the COVID pandemic has had a huge effect on all of us. And now we're all just sort of continuing on as if, all right, nothing happened and let's get right back in there and just resume as normal. And the reality is that we've all been through this really traumatic thing, regardless of profession, walk of life. And the fallout from this is pretty extreme. In the midst of the worst days of the COVID pandemic, I don't know about you, but for me, the boundaries really got blended and blurred in terms of what is the standard teacher workday and how many hours do I spend grading and I'm on call 24/7 and how do I separate that being in my house working and trying to grade assignments and give students feedback and still try to maintain some sort of music curriculum. As a result, now that we're getting back to quote unquote normal, it's tricky for us as teachers. We have to acknowledge the fact that some of these boundaries have gotten a little bit blurred, at least certainly in my case, and we sort of have to reset expectations. I want to take just a moment to mention some of the most stressful experiences I've lived through as a music teacher. Certainly this isn't a complete list, but it's a few of them that are right at the top of my experiences. I would be remiss though if once again I didn't mention the pandemic. The reality is that we see teacher burnout at an all-time high right now. And teacher burnout is its own separate video for its own separate day. But certainly there is a correlation between teacher burnout and the stressors we experience from day to day. We've come through a very traumatic time in which we're trying to be very comforting to kids and trying to help them through a really difficult situation while trying to get through it ourselves and trying to be all things to everyone. And the lines and the boundaries, again, have become blurred a little bit coming out of this time period. And for me personally, it became a tough period where I had to reestablish some of my boundaries and some of my own personal expectations about when and how I get my work done and doing it at the absolute highest level while serving kids the best, while at the same time staying sane. Let me tell you the story about me breaking out in hives. It's my first year teaching. I'm a middle school orchestra teacher and we're going to play in a gymnasium. We're on a bus getting to that school. I break out in hives all over. Now, my students were well prepared, but all that self-doubt started to creep in. And as those hives develop, my students are asking me, "Are you okay?" Fellow director's asking, "Are you okay?" Of course, I tell them, "Oh, yeah, I'm totally fine." Reality is, I was taken aback and sort of alarmed. I didn't even realize that I had reached that point of stress, that internal stress. And it was a real wake-up call for me at that point. I am unbelievably blessed to have a wife who is a professional musician, who understands what I do and supports me as I support her. And I'm incredibly blessed to have 3 kids. Fast forward in my life to a number of years later when my kids were really little, and I realized I really wasn't being the type of dad I wanted to be. I was putting them to bed on a Sunday night, and I literally, because of the fullness of my schedule on a regular basis throughout the weeks, I literally wasn't seeing them until the weekend, until Saturday again, pretty regularly with a few exceptions. And I realized something has to change. My priorities are off somehow. And my stress once again reached that sort of hives, the point of hives. Personally, I think a lot of the stress that we experience in this profession is due to the fact that we are aiming for perfection every day. We're accepting excellence, but we're aiming for perfection. And that's really difficult. The musician side of us, we're used to practicing, right? First and foremost, we're musicians. And I've spent years practicing my violin as you have practicing your instrument. And we have a very high standard for ourselves. And we're trying to get these amazing young people that we teach to appreciate that excellence as well. But by its very nature, perfection can also cut the other way. It's important because it inspires us to achieve excellence and to not settle for less than our best. But it can also destroy us if we're not careful. We stop enjoying things. Have you ever had that happen where you have an amazing performance, but all you can focus on is maybe the one thing that your kids did wrong or that you did wrong as a performer? And so this element of perfectionism, it can be a double-edged sword, and we have to really watch it. I personally have to constantly watch that. It's one of my biggest challenges. It's so important that we trust ourselves and trust the process. This is a profession where it's really easy to self-doubt, and I am certainly guilty of that from time to time. But if we trust our process and trust ourselves, then we know that, all right, hey, I'm gonna get there, I'm gonna keep working to improve, but I'm proud of me today. Maybe that didn't go as well as I wanted it to go, and I've got stress from that, but you know what? I'm proud of myself for today, and I love myself for that, and I love those around me, and I'm going to only continue to grow and improve from here. And we have to trust the fact that, all right, we have a process in place, and we're gonna stay committed to what we know is right. Here's the thing. Not everything's gonna be smooth sailing, and that's okay, and just know that going into it. What if you're trying to change the culture of a program? Maybe you're new in a position and you're trying to mold it to your vision. Here's the thing, it takes time. Again, trust yourself and trust your process. If you stay positive, you do it with positivity and kindness, but absolutely hold yourself and the students to that incredibly high standard of excellence. As long as you do it with love, you will be successful. So just stay the course and hang in there and be positive, because change doesn't happen overnight. It's a process. So trust yourself and trust your process. How about mindset? I think mindset is everything. There are so many things we can't control in this profession. And let's be honest, we all complain about those things sometimes, right? We all have those moments of frustration, and that's understandable. But what about the things that we can control? We have all these amazing young minds sitting right in front of us, these amazing people on a daily basis. We have the opportunity to bring them joy in their day, to teach them something, and for them certainly to teach us something too. I think it's a two-way street. And if we go in with that mindset of positivity, of kindness, of love and joy, we can do so much more than a mindset of negativity of, oh, they'll never get it. Oh, they can't do it. Oh, this is wrong in teaching. That is wrong. But having a positive mindset, as cliche as it might sound, makes all the difference in the world. And not letting others taint your opinion of a positive mindset is really important. Who do we align ourselves with? Now, from what I found, teachers are some of the most positive, upbeat, engaging, growth mindset people who are passionate about teaching kids. But occasionally, of course, you might come across the exact opposite. And the truth is that we have to align ourselves and surround ourselves to the extent that we can with people who are like-minded and positive and joyful and passionate about what they do. Otherwise, we've all been in that friendship where maybe it's not that way, and maybe it's a mean-spirited, negative mindset. You don't have time for that. We don't have time for that. We want to be there for kids and be positive. And to the extent that you can, control who you surround yourself with, and don't let that negativity, if there is any around you, rub off on you. I'm blessed to work with incredibly positive and passionate teachers who care a lot about kids, who are upbeat and joyful. And I hope you get to have that same experience as well. But if you're not, and I've been there before, Control it to the extent that you can, and surround yourself with joy and positivity. Next, we have to learn to say no. For me, this is one of the hardest things. I like to say yes to everything. I think we as musicians, we like to do as much as possible. We like to try to help others, and we should help others. We should take opportunities to grow. So don't get me wrong, we don't want to say no to absolutely everything. That would be awful. But if you're like me, we tend to overcommit sometimes, especially as musicians. And a lot of that harkens back to being in college and taking 22 credit hours a semester. We can do anything, right? We've dealt with that intensity. And so learning sometimes to scale back and to say, you know what, there's an opportunity cost associated with when I say yes. What other thing am I giving up when I say yes? Okay, I'm saying yes to this, so it means I can't do whatever. Now for me, personally, like I said, as a dad, that meant as I got older, understanding, oh, okay, if I say yes to this additional thing, as much as I might like to do it, I'm saying no perhaps to my children. I'm saying no to a trip with family to go do X, Y, and Z. And as a result, then I'm constantly in the mix of work, mindset of work. And don't get me wrong, in the early days, I said yes to almost everything, but this is something I got better and better at with time, at saying, you know, boy, that sounds like a great opportunity. Unfortunately, not able to commit to that at this time, no. No, thank you. And so I encourage you to exercise your right to say no from time to time. It's okay. And sometimes when you say no, even better, cooler opportunities come along later. Being efficient is a really important part of being a successful director. Now here's the thing, no matter how you look at it, you're going to spend a lot of time as a director at school. You're going to spend a lot of after school time and a lot of evening time. And that's part of it, and that's okay. But when you are away, be away. And so use that time when you are at work to be efficient. Now, obviously, have fun with your colleagues, have a great time, connect with them, have a great time with your students. But when you have work time and prep time, be efficient. Respond to those emails. Get the job done so that you're not having to play catch up outside of the school day. I think of the movie The Pursuit of Happiness and the way the main character, he didn't have a whole lot of time, but he was purposeful with the time that he did have. And so use that prep time and all those little odds and ends of time that you do have really, really efficiently. So let's talk about working smarter and not just working harder. Don't get me wrong, we work just as hard as anybody as teachers, right? And as music directors. The outside world really has no idea, right? But we know how much time and how much grit it takes to do what we do because you've gotten to this point. The challenge though, and what I've realized as I've gotten older, is I've gotten better as I've gotten older at recognizing what is going to have a bigger bang for my buck? What use of my time is better going to help kids? What use of my time is better going to impact my career and be more meaningful? What is going to have greater impact and less personal tax on me physically, mentally, and emotionally to the point of taking me to a mental breaking point? What's going to help me work smarter and not just harder? And as I said, I think this gets easier as you get older because you realize that the most precious resource of all, it's time and how you spend that with others. It really does come down to that. And understanding that sometimes less is more, all right? I'm gonna do fewer things, but I'm gonna do them really, really well. I'm gonna do this thing, I'm going to conduct this pit, and I'm going to do it better than anyone's ever done it. I'm going to commit to that. I'm going to conduct this pit orchestra, or whatever it might be. Less can be more. And we all know that expression, jack of all trades, master of none. I would rather master a few things and do them really, really well than try to pretend to be an expert at all kinds of things. I highly recommend creating a list of priorities. What are the priorities in your life? Who are the priorities in your life? Of course, your students are right up there. But what about your family, your friends? How are you budgeting your time? And a list of priorities can really help you to do that in a simple way. Meaningful assessments. When you do have to give an assignment, is it really meaningful, the feedback that you're giving? Does it really apply directly to what you're doing in class, or are you stressing yourself out, spending a million hours grading assignments? I kind of got to that point personally, and I sort of redesigned the way that I did grading, and one of my colleagues really helped me with that to understand the importance of doing so. I'm grateful to him for that. Instead of giving an assignment where you have to old school grade it, could it be done in Google Classroom, Canvas, Schoology, whatever platform you use? Could it be graded instantly that way without you even having to touch it? What about playing tests? I used to have a system where I'd have a rubric and it would be very detailed, and I spent forever grading it, recorded tests or even live tests from kids. And then I realized half of them are just tossing that piece of paper, and a lot of times it's more demoralizing than anything. It's focusing on all the things they did wrong. Instead, I went to almost kind of a mini private lesson where, all right, you're gonna get 2 minutes of my time after you play. And we talk niceties, we just chat and talk about how they're doing as human beings, which is really important first. And then we also talk about things that they can work on, things that were good and things that you want them to continue to improve upon, and showing them, hey, try your bow like this, try this. And then you have a very minimal rubric that's very simple because you've given the feedback in person. And certainly you're giving feedback with the rubric too and tying it to that as well. But minimal amount of writing and more time spent on the student experience and giving real feedback. That way, again, you're not losing your mind trying to grade a gazillion things. Think about what really needs to be assessed and cut out all the stuff that doesn't really matter. Delegation. Do you delegate? For me, this is one of the bigger challenges that I had to work through. I just have this innate desire to kind of do it all. But what I learned is that we empower kids by giving them leadership opportunities. Think of like filing in your music library, for example. Do you really need to spend those hours doing that, or can you have students come in and help, maybe during their study hall or before or after school? Forming a leadership council where they have different responsibilities and roles to help take ownership of the program that's really theirs, not yours as the director, right? And so by delegating, you could even have a parent come in and help you to file music in your library or whatever menial task needs to be done that doesn't require musical expertise. Then you're able to spend the time focusing on what matters. Let's talk about communication. Are you being crystal clear with communication? Because this can cause so much stress for you as a director because you're spending so much time having to react to scenarios. A good, simple, brief, clear email can be the difference between total confusion and total clarity. So take the time to be so ridiculously clear in your newsletters that you send out. And I would recommend a good newsletter that you're sending out to your families that you create. And it can be just a simple email newsletter. And then proactive communication. Don't wait until something becomes a problem with a child to communicate with parents. Contact them. For me, it's my freshmen, because I teach high school. I'm reaching out to freshman families, but this was true with my beginner students as well when I taught middle school. I reach out to them to have one positive parent phone call from the school that they get to experience, just to say, hey, I am so excited to have your child in class, and we're going to have a blast this year. And they're just so positive, and they're a nice person, and I'm really glad to have them in class. They're just doing a great job so far. One positive parent phone call makes all the difference, because you'd be surprised how often that doesn't happen. You'd be surprised how often parents have cried when I make that phone call to say, I've never gotten a positive phone call like that. And it can help to alleviate so much stress. And then when you do have to have a tough conversation, say, hey, need your help with something. I love your child, but this is happening. They'll be so much more receptive at that point. You already won them over. How do you handle a parent phone call then that doesn't go well? One where they are verbally abusive and screaming at you. Obviously, always take the higher road. Be professional. This can shake you to the core, and it has with me. And I've unfortunately had a few of these conversations over the years. And fortunately, by being really proactive and positive, it's helped to avoid those types of situations. But when you're teaching kids and you're dealing with high emotions sometimes with parents, and so you're going to find yourself in one of these difficult situations at some point if you haven't already. If you are being verbally abused, it's not okay. And it's okay to say, hey, this conversation is over. Right now, I understand where you're coming from, and I respect your perspective, but we need to, right now you're screaming at me and threatening me, and I'm no longer comfortable with this conversation. We can continue this with an administrator present. And your administrators are going to be very supportive of you and helpful, and they want the best for you. I'll never forget having a parent call and scream at me on the phone over a rooming assignment for a trip once. Even though I tried to do everything possible and had consulted with my principal ahead of time, these things happen sometimes. And unfortunately, this individual really lost their temper. I'm really proud of myself that I kept it professional. I had another situation once where I screamed out at a solo and ensemble event in person. And there was a student who was late coming to a performance, and the parent was bringing this child to perform in an ensemble. And unfortunately, this student was really late, but we had waited patiently, and I told the parent, hey, no problem. I'll be with you in just a moment. All good that you're late. We'll get it taken care of. And this parent wanted me to tune her daughter's instrument right at that moment. I said, I'll have to get to that in a minute. I'm caring for a younger group right now, getting them to their performance room. And I'll never forget the parent screaming at me and saying, I'm going to take you to the school board, and how dare you? And clearly, I tried to have empathy that, all right, maybe this person is going through a really tough time right now. Tried to be empathetic and understanding, but of course I'm human. And that shook me deeply. I was in my first year of teaching or second year of teaching, I can't really recall. But certainly I took that to an administrator. And don't be afraid to go to an administrator for help when there are these really difficult conversations. They're there to support you. And just be professional and do the right thing. And try not to ever put the child in a difficult position. And I'm really proud of myself in both of those situations. I handled it professionally, and I encourage you to just do the same thing. But don't be afraid to say no to verbal abuse that comes your way, and to involve an administrator when you need the help. What if you are dealing with the stresses of systemic problems that you're trying to cure? Maybe it's an issue of not having enough prep time, planning time, or enough collaboration time. Don't be afraid to go to an administrator. Administrators are such positive, helpful people overall. They care about kids first and foremost. They were teachers. And as administrators, they're trying to help as many people as they can. So try to keep an open, positive line of communication and come with solutions for your administrators, not just complaining about problems. All the great administrators appreciate you offering potential solutions as well. What if we tried this? What if we tried that? And they're, in my experience, much more likely to consider alternatives. And if none of that works and you're just stressed beyond belief, don't be afraid to look for other opportunities elsewhere if it's not working out in that situation. And it's okay to take a look at other opportunities if you're in a position in life where you can do that. I know, unfortunately, we're not always able to do that for a number of different reasons, but I would open that positive line of communication to help reduce those stressors and just to be as honest as possible with your administrators. It really does help. We have to connect. It's a really important part of what we do, connecting with significant others, with partners, with friends, with community members, churches, you name it. Being connected with others is a really important part of this process, because believe me, we're all going through this together. I think of the great Facebook groups that are out there for orchestra directors where we're all talking about kind of teaching in the trenches. And it's great. It's great to know we really kind of all go through similar sorts of things in our day-to-day. There's a certain comfort with that. It's also really comforting to talk to people who aren't involved at all in education, to have a friend group and a group of confidants who they don't have anything to do with education, but they might be involved in the private sector or whatever they do. And it's great to have that friend group and to have that sense of belonging is really important for all of us. I also talk to my confidant, my wife, often about my work. I've gotten better though over the years at kind of letting things go a little bit more, learning to let that steam off. Sometimes we got to talk about it. I'm really careful though not to burden her with my minutia day to day. But at the same time, of course we talk, that's human. We have to be able to let off steam. So I hope you have someone you can talk to. And again, don't ever be afraid to talk to psychiatrists if you need to do that too, to have that sense of community and connection as well, and that professional help. But having people that you trust in that community of people that you can connect with is everything. So this next point might seem counterintuitive, but we have to disconnect too. Let's face it, the smartphone is amazing. It allows us to be connected, but oftentimes a little bit too connected. I know in my personal case, that's certainly been the case. We've kind of gotten to this point with technology and having Canvas, Schoology, Google Classroom, whatever, and having our phones and email and phone calls, and you name it, we are so accessible. We have to protect that to a certain degree, because otherwise the stress that comes from that, always being on call on the weekends and the evenings, it's overwhelming. Don't be afraid to use that do not disturb feature on your phone, where you can have a focus group of people that can get in touch with you, but kind of the outside world, hey, I'm done after X time every day. I'm not checking messages. And I would be really clear with family members at the beginning of the year. Hey, I check messages up until X time and then I'm done. I get home to my family and they need me at that time too. Or I'm at home living my life at that point as well. And that's okay. There's nothing wrong with drawing those boundaries and be responsive, get back to them. Then that's the only catch then. Make sure you respond to those messages then. We always want to get back, ideally within that 24-hour mark, because that's important. But generally speaking, most of those messages, 99.999% of those messages can wait till the next day. And I'm speaking as someone who's at a high profile program. Those messages generally can wait. And it's okay to let your students know, I'll respond to your Google Classroom, Canvas, Schoology message the next day when I can get back to you. And drawing those boundaries, it's really, really important. So don't be afraid to disconnect, and maybe it's even turning your phone off. Oh my gosh, that seems so sacrilegious to say, but sometimes I do that, and it's okay. Go get out, get away. The real world is out here, not right here all the time. What do you do to bring you joy and peace? This is so important, because we do work in a pressure cooker. And believe it or not, when I'm in that pressure cooker, when I'm responding to emails or I'm working in my office, trying to catch up on those gazillion emails, etc., and trying to lesson plan and score study, all those things that we do as teachers, I even have relaxing sounds playing in the background. But when I'm away from the building, and I love my time at the building, but when I'm away from the building, one of the things I like to do is to get out into nature. And we have a beautiful park that is about a 20-minute drive from our home that we like to go to and just walk around as a family and just to get away and disconnect, especially on the weekends. And I love to take bike rides. I love to walk. My wife and I take walks and family walks in the evening as well, when weather permits, certainly. But staying active and getting out and about and doing things that bring you joy and bring you peace, it's really important. So think about what brings you joy and what helps you to just mentally get away. For me, it's nature. Caring for relationships. Obviously, we build relationships every day with students, and we're constantly trying to create the most positive experience for them. But what about our relationships with those around us in our personal life? Our friends, our family, our spouses, partners, significant others. I've seen so many relationships struggle on this very point because there is so much time that goes into what we do. And it is important, frankly, to have a significant other that understands what it is that we do in the hours associated with what we do. But at the same time, we have to take care of our relationships outside of the teaching profession, and spending time and putting those who we love at the top of our list is so important. So I always try to consider, am I giving the time to my wife, to my children that I need to? And am I there for my friends? Am I making those phone calls? Am I talking to them? And because it's tough, because you're trying to be many things to many different people. But by really prioritizing, we're able to make sure that we're taking care of those relationships and cherishing them. Do you get enough rest? Do you eat well? Do you get exercise? I'm bad at a lot of these things, to be honest with you, but it is important, especially the rest component. And again, this goes back to the ability to say no sometimes to something. Sometimes it's good just to do nothing for a while, to have a while where you are taking a break from teaching, music, everything, just to relax and just to take time for yourself, taking care of yourself and those around you. So getting plenty of rest is important. I have a sweet tooth, so eating well is hard sometimes, but I've gotten better as I've gotten older at that one. Eating well, it makes a difference on your overall happiness level. Certainly, exercise, getting out and about, getting out into nature. I know that's tough too if you're in a more challenging climate, depending on the time of year. I'm in the Midwest, and in the wintertime, it can be difficult, but that's where a good gym membership can go a long way, or just getting out and about and trying to find ways to enjoy nature really does help. I won't lie, I'm competitive. I'm willing to bet you are too. It's in our DNA as musicians, right? Just something about us. But here's the thing, competition should not be the sole reason for us teaching or the sole reason of our existence. The reality is that trophies, as one of my dear friends and colleagues always says, this is so wise of him, he always says, trophies collect dust and they hang on a wall. The real memories are what count. That's the experience. Empowering kids through music, that's what it's about. And certainly, competitions are helpful and they're fun and they can be really cool, but they're not the sole measure of our success. They're not the measure of our worth as a human being. Life is so much more than that. And it's one snapshot in time based on what those adjudicators hear in that one moment. So please keep in mind, don't lose your mind over competition. True life happens around us. And we're meant to experience life to its fullest and to help our kids to experience life to the fullest. One of the best antidotes for stress is joy, fun, happiness. Here's the thing. If we approach our day with fun, humor, our kids are going to reflect that back. And I know sometimes we get to this place where we think, all right, no, measure 7 has to be correct. And we can have this harshness. And not to say we can't push sometimes, and sometimes they need it. They need it. But if our overall approach is anger and negativity, boy, there's a ceiling to that. But your joy and your love, it's limitless. It's limitless what can happen. And it's the best antidote to stress. You having fun, your students having fun. And it helps to put everybody at ease and trust yourself that you can have fun. You can push them too. They need to be pushed, but you can have fun and get amazing results too. It's one of the most important parts of teaching and just living happily. So how do you handle stress as a music director? I would love to hear from you in the comments. Obviously, there's not just a one-size-fits-all, but these are the approaches that I have found help me to keep the right mental space and to help keep my stress at bay. Because let's face it, stress is a part of any job, especially when you're doing it well and at the highest level possible. But we can experience joy and have fun with our students in the process while keeping a healthy, stress-mitigated life. I wouldn't say stress-free, but stress-mitigated life. So I hope this helps. Please feel free to visit my website, www.joelpowellconductor.com, link in the description below. I have other teaching videos, how to teach beginning orchestra, how to get your orchestras to play in tune. And I would love to hear from you. I do present professional development sessions on a frequent basis around the country and conduct all around the country, and I would love to help you if I can. All the best to you, and thank you so much for teaching kids. Take care.